Mona Dajani is the global co-head of energy and infrastructure projects at Pillsbury Winthrop Shaw Pittman LLP. She leads a global practice that focuses on project finance, corporate finance, mergers, acquisitions, in connection with energy and infrastructure projects around the world. And with that, I leave it to you, Mona.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the introduction, and I'm really happy to be here today. This is really great. I am a engineer and a lawyer, and I am my office is basically a few subway stops away from Wall Street. So like you said, what I focus on is clean energy, clean tech for over 20 years. That's what I've done. Started my career at Enron in Houston, and this has been a very, very exciting time for clean energy and clean tech. And I lead a team of lawyers that have expertise in full service in all areas of clean energy and clean tech. And what I thought we could do is I wanted to talk about some global macro trends in clean energy, and then kind of dive into some more specific ones. And then if there's any questions, answer any questions for the audience. So, some of the key takeaways just globally for energy is that, number one, we are seeing that energy and human development are inextricably linked. We are seeing, this is what we're seeing right now, unfortunately, going on in Ukraine with Russia, and then with we're waiting to see with China. It's really putting energy, and especially clean energy, at the forefront. And industrial sector represents about 50% of energy and use. And as the global energy related emissions, there's going to be much more effort needed to achieve the Paris Agreement goals that we have. And I want to say that, and this may be a surprise to some of our audience members, but I really also believe that oil and natural gas and nuclear energy play an important role as well in the coming decades to lower our, 2 degrees Celsius, to go. So I do think that is going to be very important. Macroly, I see that the energy demand globally will grow 15 to 20%. We will see the transportation sector, especially with energy demand associated with transportation, is expected to grow more than 20%. We are representing many different automotive, EV manufacturers, OEMs, infrastructure funds, et cetera, in the space. And we're seeing an explosion of EVs. And I would say the leader is Norway, but I expect that EV transition is really it's growing about 8 to 10% a year in the United States. In Norway, as an example, we're looking at over 90% of the drivers have EV cars. So I really think that this transportation energy EV demand is also going to grow very significantly in the coming years. And what's key to EV transition, as well as other energy, renewable energy technologies, will be government support. And we'll see that in certain countries where there is government support, incentives, rebates, like in Norway and like in Europe and other countries, there's a proliferation of that particular technology. So I will, the last, projection is that, if we're going to lower this 2% degree Celsius, it requires innovative solutions and supportive policies. Now, I think that, what this conflict, the war in Ukraine has really highlighted is this, ESG movement and an emphasis on climate change, is that we haven't moved as fast and as rapidly as we should have in terms of the transition to renewable energy. Now, the United States is less exposed to energy prices than Europe, resulting from Russia's invasion of Ukraine, but it's coming here, and it will happen, here as well. And I think that this rapid transition is absolutely needed. Now, I wanted to just quickly now get more focused on some trends to watch for the renewable energy markets globally in 2022 that I've been seeing. And I should also add that, while I sit in New York, I'm also dual qualified in London. So now I'm happy to say I'm able to now start up going to my office in London. And from there, we're getting a lot of work from Europe and Africa and the Middle East and Asia, and here in the United States. So I'm really speaking from a global perspective from where I sit, and my focus just on renewable energy. So we're seeing, electricity demand. It's shifting closer now to pre-pandemic levels. We're seeing there is an ongoing global energy supply crunch, which means another year of high and volatile power prices, gas prices, oil prices. We're seeing supply chains putting pressure on renewable costs, as well as tariffs here in the United States that were just, that some have been just recently announced with solar, for example. And so those are really putting pressure. We are, despite all the supply chain issues and the spike in what we're seeing in the commodity prices, the renewable transactions are still growing. I'm still busier than ever. It's still crazy. We're working on offshore wind projects, solar projects, onshore wind, floating solar, energy storage, hydrogen, a lot in hydrogen. And then, and this is a little bit, another area where I want people to have an open mind, that we're seeing a lot of traction is in the carbon capture storage, and with ammonia and storage, and we are actually helping clients in those spaces get loans from the Department of Energy too, as well. So these areas are growing despite all these supply chain issues. And another big issue that we're seeing here in the United States, as well as because of what's happening in the Russian invasion of Ukraine with Germany and Europe, we're seeing infrastructure challenges and grid reliability that are really dominating a lot of the policy discussions. And from here, coming back here to the United States, the last trend is that there's a lot of clean energy technologies that are gaining a lot of government attention and investor attention, and that is really, really broadening. And so I do think that, it's, again, very bullish globally, on renewable energy and clean tech. because of the tensions between decarbonization power grids and ensuring reliable and affordable power supply, are leading governments and companies to consider a wide range, of clean energy technologies. And while, at least here in the United States, established solar PV and onshore wind technologies are dominating new builds and green development globally this year, there's significant attention, and I cannot emphasize this more, on alternatives that investors here in Wall Street and around the world, and infrastructure funds and pension funds are focused on, which is, battery energy storage, offshore wind, low carbon hydrogen, and carbon capture, storage, and nuclear. So these are areas that are becoming clearer in many countries. Energy storage, I will say, is and significant battery deployment are resulting in that we're seeing, especially in Europe. For example, in Germany, Spain, Portugal, they have introduced auction categories for combined renewable storage projects. And in both China and India's, we're seeing tenders with storage requirements that are also proliferating. Another area, again, like I kind of alluded to this, that's a little bit controversial in our clean energy space, but I am welcoming this is, and we're seeing this especially in Europe, is nuclear energy that is emerging as a preferred low carbon technology to reliable electricity. The decarbonization plans of Eastern Europe, China, and Japan are considering nuclear power. And just in Japan, where we do a lot of work with clients, we're seeing 4.2 gigawatts of nuclear that's expected to restart just in 22 alone. And United Kingdom and France are also launching new nuclear projects. Germany, as we all know, because of what's happening with the Russian invasion, has still at this point is shutting its remaining 4 gigawatts of nuclear capacity this year. So I just wanted to just give a quick overview and kind of see if you have any questions for me. But hopefully this has been helpful to just go global, macro, and then a little bit focused.
No, Mona, that's incredibly helpful, and obviously your perspective, one, working for a global firm and being in the two financial capitals or two of the biggest financial capitals of the world, gives some unique perspective.
Thank you. Yes.
While I think for the broader, let's just say, intersection of finance and climate tech, I think there's less, at least, controversy on the nuclear side of things, especially for assets that are in the ground. And there's a number of questions in the chat, but I wanted to just give one quick question on. Sure. You mentioned kind of a role on where you see oil and gas being engaged and being a part of getting to staying at 2 degrees or lower. Can you expand on that a little bit before I bring up a couple of the chat questions?
Sure. It's really an exciting time for renewable energy, and technology innovation in clean energy and declining costs are making renewable energy more competitive than ever. And this year we've seen a lot of opportunity as demand for clean energy sources accelerates in most market segments around the world. And especially we're seeing new growth opportunities that are largely driven by rising concerns around climate change and environmental sustainability and governance, ESG considerations. That's also a lot of what we do too as well. And the oil and gas companies, and I have to say, I'm much more, the Europeans are much more ahead of the American oil and gas companies, but they're seeing, that there are a number of supply chain constraints and higher shipping and commodity costs. And, we're seeing a lot of oil and gas companies pivot while they are using, driven by ESG investor concerns. And there's been a growing interest in next generation clean energy technologies. And more oil and gas companies are considering and are working on emerging technologies such as hydrogen, advanced batteries, and like I said, in the carbon capture and storage, and whether that is, you know, with renewables or not. So I do think that you know, the oil and gas companies, like I said, especially the ones in the European ones like BP and Total and Shell, for example, have really stepped up, in my view. And you know, they are working on, they have a lot of the infrastructure already there. They already have a very highly skilled workforce that are pivoting to our industry. And you know, and I think that with respect to you know, also the Biden administration to fully decarbonize the U.S. economy is helping spur activity by a lot of these oil and gas companies. And this will drive further growth, particularly if legislation is enacted. And that's another webinar to talk about, but I'm very bullish about that, that it will happen, at least here in the United States. It won't happen as it is now with the entire Build Back Better, but there's a lot of specific technologies here in the United States that we're very bullish on, that oil and gas companies are really at the forefront of, and hydrogen and the carbon capture storage and ammonia comes to mind.
Thanks, Mona. And as you said, not only could you do your own webinar, it looks like it would take us a full hour just to answer all the Q&A. So unfortunately,
Yes.
We have to move on to our next speaker. But Mona, thank you so much for your time.